This video is not intended for children.
Hello everyone, our topic this week was requested by Hunter Walkspack. We'll be going over the Tyranids from the Warhammer 40k franchise.
So, to start with, the simplest explanation of the Tyranids would be that they are essentially Super Zerg. They are a purely biological species that can modify their own genetic coding, spawning creatures to facilitate whatever needs the Hive fleet have, including spacefaring bioships, and to the best knowledge of anyone in both reality and the 40k verse, they exist solely to consume biomass and thereby enhance and expand the Tyranid species as a whole. The Tyranids are capable of rapid adaptation, creating organisms specifically adapted to counter the challenges that any given Hive fleet faces on a regular basis, or, given enough time, during particular battles and campaigns. Tyranids can be loosely broken up into dozens of categories depending upon how micro or macro you want to look into the species. The way we're going to be breaking them down today, broadly speaking, is Hive fleets, reconnaissance units, and biomass absorption units. And all of these seemingly independent units are watched over and directed by the Hive Mind.
The Hive Mind is the overriding will that directs the Tyranid species as a whole. To the best of anyone's knowledge, the Hive Mind does not have a singular physical presence or body that acts as its source. Rather, the Tyranid species is its body. Indeed, in many ways, their species as a whole could be considered similar to the trillions of cells that make up a human body, all functioning together for the continuation of the singular animal. This has both advantages and drawbacks. The disadvantage is that this works through a sort of colonial hive mind structure, i.e. the more Tyranids are together in a single location, the greater their access to the hive mind entire, and resultantly the greater their cohesion. To assist with this process, the Tyranids field numerous synapse creatures alongside their more standard units. A synapse unit is tapped directly into the hive mind and acts as a sort of psychic beacon, sending the will of the hive mind out to the standard units within its range of influence, allowing the hive mind to more easily direct all of the Tyranids it has created. Unlike most fictions with similar telepathic and/or hive mind setups, these synapse creatures can take a variety of forms, and all have uses, generally in combat, 40k is a wargame after all, outside of their control tower-esque functions. In fact, most of them are far more powerful, and resultantly more expensive in terms of biomass components and unit costs in-game, than the average Tyranid. This means that if opposing forces can take out the synapse creatures, the Tyranid hordes can be thrown into disarray. The Tyranids are aware of this weakness, however, and generally field numerous synapse creatures as a result. Additionally, more standard Tyranids still function without the direct oversight of the hive mind, as each creature is imprinted with basic purposes, so they're still dangerous, but, as an example, a group of basic Tyranid melee units would devolve into a pack of armor-piercing wolves, rather than being a well-coordinated strike team, so still dangerous, but usually more manageable.
When the Hive Mind is being properly broadcast to every member of the Hive fleet, however, it means that millions of deadly, specifically designed creatures are being directed by a singular and very intelligent will, making the Tyranids, when functioning properly, a very dangerous threat. In fact, in most cases, the people of the Milky Way consider the Tyranids to be the single greatest threat to the galaxy, as they are the only faction that cannot be parlayed with in some manner or another. Even the forces of chaos, see our previous video here, can, at least in some cases, try and convert their opposition rather than destroy them outright, although the result of such endeavors are rarely pleasant. But the Tyranids just want to consume all the biomass in their path. It's not unheard of for factions that are otherwise enemies, or in some cases, literally currently at war, to band together to fight off Tyranids before going back to fighting each other. Despite the Hive Mind's impressive intelligence and cunning, however, there is another factor that results from the Hive Mind that is arguably just as dangerous to the Tyranids' prey. When assembled in a large group, particularly the Hive fleets, the collective consciousness of all of those Tyranids has an actual metaphysical weight to it. A phenomenon that has been dubbed the shadow in the void. An oppressive psychic presence that is so great that it affects everything that relies upon the power of the void to function, and in great enough number can even be felt by the non-psionic masses. Most of the factions of the 40k verse use the void for FTL travel, FTL communication, and to access the psionics or magic wielded by some of their most powerful agents. The Shadow in the Void can inhibit or even suppress the functionality of all of these capabilities, with Psychers, the mages/mentalists of the 40k verse, struggling to access their powers, going mad, or even outright dying when they attempt to access the Void. FTL communications, such as the call for reinforcements, are usually cut off, and FTL travel directly to a system sieged by the Tyranids can be delayed, interfered with, or even rendered impossible, leaving systems caught unaware by the Tyranids isolated from help before the battle even begins. Obligatory fuck.
The hive fleets are the major bodies of the Tyranid hordes, consisting of hundreds, thousands, or even millions of bioships, with purposes ranging from combat to repair and reproduction, and even FTL travel. The hive fleets either act as warships themselves, incubators for future Tyranid bioforms, troop carriers, or whatever else the fleet needs. They are massive fleets that scour the galaxy in search of biomass to consume, and anything big enough to be called a hive fleet generally carries the Shadow in the Void with it. Likely as a result of the shadow cast by the hive mind, the Tyranids do not use the same brand of FTL travel used by the majority of the factions of the 40k verse. While most factions travel physically through the warp, the Tyranids manipulate gravity and use a sort of spatial compression drive approach instead. This mode of travel has two disadvantages and one major advantage over the more standard warp travel most races use. First, Tyranid FTL is noticeably slower than warp travel. The Tyranids lock onto either the gravity well of a star system or onto the psychic energy they can detect from a star system, assuming such energy is powerful enough to be noticed, and then somehow manipulate that star system's gravity and create a compressed space corridor through which the fleet travels at higher speeds. The second disadvantage is that these corridors are fragile, and inevitably their structural integrity fails well before reaching the system, leaving the hive fleet to travel months, years, or even decades at sublight speeds before reaching their target. The great advantage to this form of FTL travel, though, is that it is significantly more reliable. See our previous video on the warp for more details, but TLDR, warp travel is known for being very inconsistent and dangerous, especially for longer jumps. Additionally, Tyranid FTL gives their intended prey a double-edged sword of sorts, as the gravitic tunnel they create causes earthquakes and other natural disasters to occur on planets in a targeted solar system. This obviously causes numerous potential problems, however, for those familiar with the Tyranid's capabilities, it's also an early warning.
Tyranid reconnaissance units are the most common way for the hive fleets to have a psychic signature to lock onto. The most common reconnaissance unit is known as a gene stealer. Others exist, but these are the major players in prepping a planet or system for consumption by a hive fleet. Gene stealers are fired out in pods by the hundreds or thousands, and when they land on a planet, they seek the most developed native life forms and proceed to burrow into their society. As six-limbed, bone-blade-wielding, toothy monstrosities, that might seem impossible, but gene stealers are insidious. One of only a handful of unit types with high-level intelligence functions outside of the hive mind's influence. They wouldn't be much use if they couldn't think outside of the hive mind's range, after all. Gene stealers will isolate innocuous targets and implant them with a genetic seed, using a stabby injection tube from their mouths. In a matter of hours, the infected target will find that breeding offspring has become a new life calling, and later, when a child is born, it will have distinctive Tyranid traits, but establish a psychic link between the original gene stealer itself and its parents, making them all loyal to the gene stealer and the propagation of their family. In this way, the gene stealer hopes to create cults that grow large enough in numbers to emit a psychic signal that can be picked up by its parent hive fleet, signaling that the planet is ripe for the harvest. When the fleet arrives, the gene stealers sabotage the planet's defenses from the inside. The cults are then gobbled up with everything else. Whether they're cool with this depends largely upon who's writing the rulebook or story at the time.
Once a hive fleet arrives, and the gene stealers have hopefully crippled the planet's defenses, it's time for the biomass absorption units to come into play. These take the form of everything from basic bone-bladed monster swarms, to explosive artillery creatures, to massive intelligence monster generals, biogun-firing flying creatures, or even just orbital bombardment of digestive juices. They also make up the bulk of the units you'd actually field in a tabletop 40k game. Once a hive fleet arrives, they begin fielding not only numerous combat units, but terraforming spores and creatures. As we've mentioned, the Tyranids seek out biomass, and we have never encountered any creature from any fiction that are more efficient in the consumption process. Not only do they kill and eat all creatures on a planet, they also devour the plant life. They create special units to scrub the atmosphere clean of all bacteria. They boil and consume the oceans. When the Tyranids are done, they leave nothing but a lifeless rock behind them, having devoured everything on a planet down to the cellular level. The only way life survives on a planet when the fleet has left is if there was something buried deep beneath the Earth that happened to have been blocked off despite the burrowing the gene stealers probably did in the decades it took to draw the fleet to their planet. Then the Hive Fleet moves on and repeats the process on another planet, another system. Doing the same for any fleets they encounter in space, even other Tyranid fleets, stripping them of all biological material and gaining knowledge before proceeding onward. This has even led some to refer to the Tyranids collectively as the Great Devourer. Considering this, it's worth noting that the Chaos Demons and the Tyranids are not allies, but in general prefer not to fight each other. Tyranids seek only to consume more biomass, and demons are formed of pure psychic energy, leaving nothing to devour upon defeat, but still wounding fleets in the battle. Demons, on the other hand, seek to twist and control their enemies, and most individual Tyranids function only at the hive mind's command. It'd be like trying to mind control a cell to work against the other cells in a body. Plus, the hive mind itself is far too powerful to be corrupted by any demon. And the shadow it casts in the warp inhibits the abilities of any demons a fleet would face.
The Tyranids originate from somewhere outside of the Milky Way galaxy. It is unknown where they come from, how old they are as a species, whether they're coming from one or more galaxies that they've already cleansed of life, or whether they're running from something even meaner and nastier than they are. No one in-universe is even certain exactly what drew them there, though the Tyranids have, by the time of the newest editions, been around long enough for people to make accurate guesses. As a player base, we know that the detonation of a powerful psychic machine roughly 10,000 years ago fired off a psionic wave powerful enough to draw their attention, and ta-da! A few millennia later, they followed the food here sign to the Milky Way. Since then, powerful psionic fields have continued to draw them once they arrived in the Milky Way, particularly the beacon being broadcast by the Emperor of Mankind, see our video on him here. It's also unclear exactly how many Tyranids are out there. We just know that there are more, and inferences by the game designers indicate that there are probably a lot more.
Over the past few centuries, 3 major Tyranid hive fleets have invaded the galaxy, each fleet bigger, stronger, and smarter than the last, because the hive mind learns from its mistakes each time. Each major hive fleet has also taken a titanic struggle from one or more of the other factions to be put down. But despite their best efforts, the Tyranids have never been eradicated entirely. The first one, Hive Fleet Behemoth, took the galaxy by surprise, with the various powers unprepared for the intelligence behind what they presumed were simply animalistic creatures. The Tyranids actually earned their name during this first invasion, with the Empyrean of Man naming the Tyranids after they consumed all the biomass of a planet called Tyran, showing the galaxy the dangers the creatures posed. The second one, Hive Fleet Kraken, surprised most of the galaxy again because all but the most paranoid had presumed that the first fleet had been the entirety of the Tyranid threat. The second wave, however, proved they had obviously been wrong. The third one, Hive Fleet Leviathan, was the most crafty, reminding the galactic powers that, hey, space is three-dimensional, by attacking a star system and then dipping down to travel below the disk of the galaxy before snapping up another system like a shark in the water, rather than barreling in a straight line from one target to the next like a bullet.
All 3 fleets have been defeated, but smaller fleets have also encroached on the galaxy in between major invasions. The real danger, though, is the fact that scattered remnants of each fleet remained after the majority were broken, eventually consuming enough biomass to form large, dangerous fleets once more, or expanding power in other ways, all presumably working together under the hive mind's direction. Fun examples include one fleet that goes around ignoring other biomass-filled worlds in favor of gobbling up worlds that repelled a previous Tyranid invasion, consuming the fallen Tyranids left behind and learning that system's weaknesses in the process before attacking planets that were still weakened. Another has parked itself in a single system and is growing a continent-sized Tyranid of some sort on one of the planets instead of devouring everything and moving on. And in the wake of a giant rift to the warp all but splitting the galaxy in half, another fleet has begun specializing in anti-demon tactics and goes around shutting rifts into the void through the sheer power of the hive mind's shadow, ensuring that the demons don't destroy the biomass the Tyranids want for themselves. And while all of this goes on, some believe that each of these hive fleets, great and small, are nothing but expeditionary forces for the true bulk of the Tyranid fleet, still out in deep space, slowly coming to devour all life in the Milky Way.
And that's basically the Tyranids, Great Devourer of the Warhammer 40k franchise. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like and maybe share it with someone you know might like it. If you have ideas for videos you'd like to see us do in the future, do like Hunter Walks Back and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore, let's play, or other, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been
True Masters and Morons, signing off.
Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more like it, hit that subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, click the link on the left.
Thank you to all of our patrons for making these videos possible.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.